Right, so AEW Dynamite this past week drew its worst rating for AEW Dynamite in over a year, with it being one of the lowest ratings ever for an AEW Dynamite, and perhaps an alarming sign for AEW. There are clearly some things that need to change with AEW TV and the way they present themselves and their booking, and there's also a lot of problems for AEW to overcome, but at the same time, as a matter of fact, it seems as though AEW are already trying out new changes for AEW Dynamite and Collision now. So we're going to talk about all that and more today, so like and subscribe to the channel as we discuss AEW TV and the changes I think they need to make, and it seems as though they're making already. So first of all, as you can see from this WrestleNomics graph, credit to them, WrestleNomics.com, we can see that AEW Dynamite this past week drew a 472,000 viewer rating. And you can look on this graph and see that that is the lowest they've done in over a year. It also, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, appears to be the first time AEW has ever dipped below 500,000, and with a 100,000 drop from the previous week. Last week's AEW Collision also didn't appear to do too well. Dave Meltzer in his tweet mentions the US Open tennis was big, but not enough for this number. Okay, Dave, why even mention it then? So maybe that's a reason for the rating. But to me, a large reason for this rating is I feel as though we're in, I believe, the second or third week of this residency at the 2300 arena. I think AEW Dynamite may be starting to feel a bit same-ish. Like, I don't think there was much from this AEW Dynamite episode this past week to make it stand out on its own. I thought there was some good matches on the show, don't get me wrong. Monet and Alex Windsor, Mercedes Moné for the TBS title was a great match. The tag match seemed good as well, and of course the All-Star tags are fun, but that's a whole other conversation about the All-Star tags and how repetitive they've started to become. And also with this Dynamite in particular, there was pretty much nothing announced for the show until maybe about an hour or so before. There was maybe one match announced for this show, and it ended up only being a 4-match card, which also this week's Collision also was a 4-match card this week, which was interesting to me. Maybe that's the new direction for AEW Weekly TV, or at least while they're at the 2300. Yeah, clearly I think there was some card building and booking issues with this show, and that can maybe go down to a lot of the absences that are taking place in AEW right now. Swerve Strickland is away from TV getting surgery, Will Ospreay is getting neck surgery and will be gone for like a year or so, and then on Dynamite, Kenny Omega was written off as well, so that's 3 of the biggest baby faces in the company now written off, and AEW in itself is already very heel heavy, with the Don Callis family being the largely most dominant TV entity in the entire company. And as a result, the Don Callis family often dominate these cards with multiple segments and multiple matches. This last week on Dynamite, we saw Lance Archer from the Don Callis family have a match, and then in the main event, they had that All-Star tag. It feels like most Dynamite or AEW TV main events right now are an all-star tag with Don Callis family versus Babyface Group X. And don't get me wrong, these matches are fun most of the time, but when you're doing these all-star tags over and over again in front of the same arena and same setting, it can just feel like you're watching the same show over and over again, and it's repetitive and nothing new is going on. And this is especially apparent for the women's division in AEW. This has been an issue for a couple of months now, where all-star tags have just been the dominant storytelling device for the women's division, and in my opinion, it hasn't been very effective whatsoever. It feels like they just throw all the women into one big tag match, and then by the end of it, all the women just run out to do a big brawl, and that's how they fit everything all into one segment. And yeah, I really would like to see AEW do more different things and try more with the AEW women's division, because the all-star tags, once again, were fun at the start for them, but then they just started doing it every week, and they'd sub out and switch out one person from the match. Like, what's the point? It feels like Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander have just been treading in water for so long. Willow especially is just doing nothing really right now, isn't involved in any way, and Statlander has been doing this slow burn Death Rider story for so long now as well. And yeah, with the absence of massive stars like Ospreay and Swerve and Kenny Omega gone from TV, I really feel like this is a good opportunity now for AEW to give a higher platform for their women's division and give them that extra TV time and extra attention that those big babyface names were getting. I just think this should be used as an opportunity to build up more talent. It's definitely an opportunity now for AEW to try something new, and I personally would just like to see something a little bit more than the same rinse and repeat all-star tags with the same cast of like 12 different people just being rotated in each week. I do think last night's edition of AEW Collision was actually a lot better than Dynamite. This did of course feature another women's all-star tag, but at least at the very end of it we finally got some sort of story direction, with a 4-way match being announced for Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander and Tekla for All Out, and I really think this could be the match that Toni finally loses this belt. I really think Statlander should be the one to win it, but part of me could even see Tekla or Jamie Hayter getting the win here. I think any of them could be a possibility, and I think it could be the start of a new direction for the women's division. And Toni Storm is someone who will get TV time every week regardless of whether or not she's the champion, so if you get that belt on someone else, then we'll get both of them on TV every week and more space to flesh out more stories for the women's division. At least in my head, that is how it should go. Will it? That remains to be seen. Also, I mentioned it at the start of the video, but in terms of changes that AEW already seem to be making to TV, is that they've already announced a whole card for Dynamite next week. No, they're not leaving it till an hour before, thank God for that. And this show also has 4 matches announced for it, which again, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not. Are they doing 4-match shows going forward for AEW Dynamite now? And AEW Collision as well was also 4 matches last night? I'm not sure, but noticeably, 2 women's matches on this show, which is nice to see. I can't remember anything like that happening, especially on Dynamite, with one of those matches being a Philly street fight with Toni Storm. I have a feeling that this could be a way to, you know, get her damaged and have her selling injuries going into the 4-way match and have her lose looking strong. I reckon this could be the way they're doing it. Yeah, this AEW Dynamite rating, I'm not sure how alarming it really is. I guess the way to really find out is see how next week's AEW Dynamite does, especially now that they've got all these matches announced in advance and they don't have the excuse of having nothing announced until an hour before. Personally, I think this Dynamite has some good stuff on it. Josh Alexander v Adam Page is an actual match with heat for the world champion, not a match where he's just a background character or just a number in an all-star tag. And then all these other matches all have storyline purposes. Ricochet is of course feuding with the Hurt Syndicate, Mercedes Moné is feuding with Riho, and Toni Storm is feuding with the Triangle of Madness, which has Tekla in it and of course Sky Blue in it. So this ought to be maybe a good card. So immediately, it's nice to see AEW announcing matches in advance, all that have storyline reason to be there and aren't just an all-star tag chucked together announced an hour before the show, which very well could still happen, but at least we've got 4 matches with good storyline purposes and good heat going into them, in my opinion. That is a good change for AEW to be making. Hopefully it is reflective every week going forward and it isn't just this week where they choose to announce all these matches in advance and actually put some thought into the booking of these matches. The All Out card got a few updates as well this week from Dynamite and Collision. As I mentioned, there is that 4-way match for the women's world title. Copeland and Christian Cage are of course facing FTR. That was the first match announced for the show. Then we have the Gates of Agony and Ricochet against the Hurt Syndicate with MVP actually wrestling. That'll be interesting to see. Mercedes Moné and Riho of course. Moxley and Darby Allin finally seemingly blowing off their feud with a big coffin match. And MJF returned last night on Collision 1 day after getting married to attack Mark Briscoe, and now they're having another match in their long-standing feud they've had. So yeah, decent card, and I'm sure there's definitely more to get announced, and I'm glad that AEW did a bulk announcement of matches on last night's card and actually made them have purpose to get them together and have reasons, because once again, AEW's constant issue they've always had is they just don't announce stuff weeks in advance. AEW at the start of it used to have matches announced for Dynamite in 3 weeks time, and it had people excited for those Dynamites in 3 weeks time. Tony Khan used to come out and announce to the live crowd that in 9 days time there will be a match on this show. It just doesn't happen anymore. AEW chooses to announce stuff that is happening at the next show and only the next show. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm done yapping that. I didn't script this video in the slightest. You can probably tell it's probably all over the place, but that's just my thoughts on the current state of AEW TV. A bit of a whirlwind week because I thought this week's Dynamite was a bit repetitive to as it usually is, whereas Collision, whilst it was a bit repetitive, I thought it was a very strong show in quality in terms of matches and storylines, and it seems as though going into this next Dynamite, they've got a lot of the issues from this week's Dynamite now fixed. So it's going to be interesting to see how that does in the ratings and to see if it really is an alarming rating for this week's Dynamite or if this was just an anomaly. We'll check back in next week, of course. But if you did enjoy this video and did enjoy this yap fest from me and want to see more stuff like this from me, then like and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a video, and comment down below what you want to listen to me yap about next and talk about next for 20 minutes aimlessly. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye and keep on rolling.